A man ahead of his time. In the bustling streets of ancient Athens, where debates echoed through marble halls and ideas shaped the destiny of nations, one man dared to ask the biggest questions of all. What is justice? What is the ideal society? And how should we live our lives? But first, if this is your first time watching us, please support us by subscribing to receive the latest videos. Plato's story begins in a world of turmoil, a city of beauty and brilliance, but also corruption and war. From these contradictions emerged one of the greatest minds in human history. Plato was born in 427 BCE into an aristocratic family in Athens. His family had deep ties to politics. He was expected to follow in their footsteps. As a child, he was exposed to poetry, drama, gymnastics, and philosophy. But the greatest influence on young Plato's life came from a man who had no wealth, no political power, just questions. Socrates. Plato became a devoted student of Socrates, spending years in his company, learning not from books but through dialogue and questioning. In 399 BCE, Plato witnessed a tragedy that would change him forever. Socrates, accused of corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods, was sentenced to death by drinking poison. Plato was devastated, not just by the loss of his mentor, but by the injustice of the trial. He began to doubt the very foundations of Athenian democracy. If the people could condemn the wisest man in Athens, what hope was there for truth and justice? Disillusioned with politics, Plato turned away from public life and toward philosophy. In his famous story, The Allegory of the Cave, Plato describes prisoners chained inside a cave since birth. They can only see shadows projected on a wall in front of them. To them, those shadows are reality. One prisoner escapes, climbs out of the cave, and is blinded by the sunlight. Slowly, he sees the real world: trees, animals, the sun. He realizes that everything he believed was false. When he returns to free the others, they reject him. They cling to the only reality they've ever known: the shadows. Plato uses this story to explain the journey of the philosopher, the painful path from ignorance to enlightenment. In his most famous work, The Republic, Plato lays out his vision for a perfect society. He believed that justice comes when everyone performs the role they are naturally suited for. He divides society into three classes: rulers, philosopher, kings, guided by wisdom; guardians, soldiers, driven by courage; producers, farmers; artisans, motivated by desire for Plato. Only a philosopher king, educated in truth and virtue, could rule justly. Democracy, he believed, risked giving power to the ignorant and selfish. In this ideal state, education is key. Children would be raised not to seek wealth or fame, but truth and harmony. Plato didn't just write theories, he built a school to teach them. Around 387 BCE, he founded the Academy, the world's first institution of higher learning. For nearly 1,000 years, it attracted students from across the Mediterranean. One of his most famous students was Aristotle, who would later challenge and expand on Plato's ideas. Through the Academy, Plato's influence spread far beyond Athens. His dialogues became foundational texts for philosophy, inspiring thinkers from St. Augustine to Renaissance scholars. Plato's ideas did not fade with time. They evolved, challenged, and inspired generation after generation. During the Middle Ages, Christian, Jewish, and Islamic philosophers adapted Plato's concept of eternal forms to their understanding of God and divine truth. In the Renaissance, artists and thinkers rediscovered his writings, linking beauty, order, and harmony to the natural and human world. In modern times, Plato's influence reaches far beyond philosophy classrooms. His ideas continue to shape politics, ethics, education, and psychology. Concepts like the subconscious mind, the ideal self, or even utopian visions of society can trace their roots to Plato's work. Yet, critics have long debated his vision. Some say his republic leans dangerously toward totalitarianism, sacrificing individual freedom for the sake of order. Others question whether a philosopher king could ever truly remain uncorrupted by power. But perhaps Plato never intended for his ideas to be taken as strict blueprints. Instead, he wanted to provoke thought, to challenge assumptions, to make us question what we think we know. Plato developed a radical idea that the world we see is not the real world. Everything around us, reefs, animals, people, are imperfect copies of perfect eternal forms or ideas. For example, every beautiful thing shares in the form of beauty. Every just act reflects the form of justice. But no physical object is ever perfectly beautiful or perfectly just. Only in the world of forms do perfection and truth exist. This philosophy led Plato to believe that most humans live in ignorance, mistaking appearances for reality. We are like prisoners in a dark cave, watching shadows on the wall, believing them to be real. More than 2,000 years have passed since Plato walked the streets of Athens, yet his questions still echo today. What is justice? What is truth? How should we live? In a world full of noise, distraction, and division, Plato reminds us that the search for wisdom begins within, and that true change comes not from power or wealth, but from thought, dialogue, and the courage to question. He was indeed a man ahead of his time, and perhaps still ahead of ours.